What's going on, everyone? So here we have very interesting broadcast, a live stream between an old PlayStation executive, Adam Boyce. He applauds Microsoft's agile gaming approach, right? There are no victims in the Xbox multi-platform era, says former PlayStation executive. And we're going to go into details of what he really means by that. And I agree with what he's saying. Like, you have to adapt with the times changing. You know what I mean? Looking at the market value now and what gamers want the most, and not being stuck in a blockbuster era. Because he goes into how traditionalists still want things to stay the way they are, but that's not what's best for Xbox or best for the gaming industry, and just things in general. It's like saying I still want people to go to the movies and buy DVDs. You know what I mean? Something that's like, but that's the reality is no longer really plausible as a mainstream reality. And he just goes into some details that I think are very important. And you see here, he used to work at PlayStation. That was him back in the days. He was around, and he was around when it was really about that. And there was the console wars being even more, I'd say, d- competitive in that traditional sense. Now it's a different type of competition. That's why people need to stop getting stuck on hardware when really you don't even make a profit off of that unless you're Nintendo or towards the end of your generation. You know what I mean? If you don't drop the price. Then we have over here at Eurogamer, it's taken 8 years, but finally Game Pass is positioned to save the Xbox console business and give Xbox a point. Amongst the doom and gloom around Xbox consoles, there is still reason to be hopeful, which I think is actually very true because if you look at the state, definitely what they just showed this year back in January, because we're already in February now, time is flying, right? But January was a great month to start off the year. We've seen the most incredible lineup in gaming history coming from Xbox, like for Xbox, like their world. They've never had a lineup that good. So much that even after that lineup, they're bringing games still to other platforms on top of that, and feeding Sony, and putting them in their backpack, right? So the ponies can get pony Sony. I almost said pony, but so the ponies can get Sony's canceled rainbow balls out of their mouths. It's a term I made up for people that lick Sony's balls too much and they need to yeah, get into in reality. So let's go down here and read a little bit of this, and we're going to go into this interview and we're going to talk about some things. So down here it says, Boys, known by many for PlayStation's infamous How to Share Games PlayStation 4 video, was PlayStation Vice President or third party relations between 2012 and 2016. More recently, he was the co CEO of Iron Galaxy, and he recently founded consultancy firm Vivareto, if that's how you say it. Not, excuse me. Speaking in an interview with Gamertag Radio, Boys, which Phil Spencer was just on there, Boys was asked for his opinion on Microsoft's increased focus on multi-platform release, which, by the way, they still said there's going to be exclusives on Xbox. Yeah, I know that. Multiple former Xbox exclusives have been recently announced for PS5. Most recently, Forza Horizon 5 and Indiana Jones: The Great Circle, and boss Phil Spencer has said there are no red lines for what could come next. Not everyone has reacted positively to the news, which that's always going to happen. However, with some notable Xbox influencers even have publicly withdrawn support for the platform, I understand why people have feelings about it and opinions because their idea is the identity of me choosing a brand and being beholden to that brand is unilateral. And therefore, that should be the one source of all content, Boy said. But that's the traditional sense. But I do think if we think of an analogy of they they were Blockbuster that became Netflix, and what I mean by that is when they began, it was all about physical units being the entertainment experience in the living room, and there was a plastic player that you put your disc in, and it plays it. So you need to serve people with the physicality of it. hmm Before we went into the digital matrix, he added, retail and partnerships are important. You and I have both waited in many lines and many early mornings openings to rush in there and sprint against everyone else. Yep, camping for midnight releases, all that. I mean, I camped for the Series X and all that. PlayStation, and then it's gonna be camping for the Switch too, all that. I like doing that. It's a once in a decade thing. And I usually, unless they do mid-gen upgrades, lost a race, by the way, not me, to get that console as fast as we possibly could, and it's just different now. No, he's right. You don't have to do that anymore. But let's go into here and let's see what he says, and we'll read a little bit more. And right here is a good time to highlight this.
And work together. That's different. Costs have risen. So that's actually what I realized with all these answers that I got. The whole foundation under our feet has changed. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very difficult for anyone to look into a crystal ball and say, if we just do these 5 things, we're going to make a lot of money and make gamers happy. You almost have to try things. And that's why I give so much space to modern day companies that have to do a lot of pivots and trials and errors. Watching your guys' interview with Phil was really inspiring, and him talking about how they've evolved and changed their tactic. Back when I was at PlayStation, it was very different. We were very standoffish with each other. It was the console wars. I was a lieutenant in the wars, so I know very well what that.
So you see what he said? He was a lieutenant in that war. He was with PlayStation, and he's being intellectually honest. See, that's what I like about people like him. They're intellectually honest, and he's giving credit where it's due, seeing where Microsoft is going, and calling them the Netflix of gaming. And I've been saying that, you know what I mean? All those people talking about, you're using the Game Pass too much, so you're not buying games. What do you mean? Like that Reforged Gaming clown. I'm like, that's like somebody being told that you're on Netflix and Amazon Prime too much, you're not buying Blu-rays or DVDs. And it's like, what are you talking about? That's not the times anymore. Now the video game industry is kind of shifting towards that. That's why even Sony has a Game Pass model. Nintendo has Nintendo Switch Online, and that's going to evolve even more too. Watch, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, and PC users they don't buy physical copies. That's been gone. You know what I mean? It's like this is just the way things are moving. It's more space efficient too. Now there are some people that do want to own physical copies because they feel like that one day that things can be taken to them, or there may be in some uh, I guess, post-apocalyptic setting where they want to make sure they own all their content and license can't be taken away from them. But you have stuff like GOG 2 on PC, which I think is nice to help with that. But first and foremost, it's going to be fine. Things are going to be up, and you don't have to worry about too much. But getting back to what he's saying, um, it makes a lot of sense. So let's continue.
Looks like. But I think the reality is now it's just about getting great content to as many people as possible and trying to create like a very vibrant garden of opportunity and success for developers, right?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up about Phil and
I agree with him. So you see what he just said? It's about getting people the best amount of content and high quality content and engagement as much as possible. That's what Game Pass does. That's what Netflix does, right? The thing is that because Sony can't do it, there's some people that want to downplay that. I mean, they have an aspect of it, and it's not too bad. It's still good, but Game Pass is just like you said, the Netflix of gaming. And it's absolutely amazing, and they're providing people with so much gaming content that they're going to put it also elsewhere. It's the best way to use your money and influence to benefit the gaming community and be pro-consumer. You see what I mean? So that people could have so much content that it's too much that even if they had enough time in a day, and we all know this, even if you own one console, if you have enough time in a day, it's hard to catch up with all that content just even on one console. And now you have it across multiple devices. Plus, if you're getting into TV shows, Netflix too, you got a family, like all those type of things, right? You got to work out, right? You know what I mean? You don't have enough time, so it's not bad to have too much content. I'd rather have too much than none, right? I think everybody can agree with that, and Microsoft is providing that. So yeah, the whole mentality of you need to buy games at full price is kind of stupid when you have a service to try them out. And even if you do end up liking a game and you want to own it, and you don't want to keep paying for the service because you're too busy and you don't even have enough time for that, but you want to get to that game, you can get a discount on there. It's totally worth it.
um, they their strategy. I love it. I like the path where they're going, but I feel like the messaging is a little bit confusing for like the average consumer. Like, so I think one of the questions that Paris asked Phil,
Yeah.
hey, look, and it's hard. 'Cause we only have like a limited time. I wish
Yeah.
we had a longer interview, right? But
Sure.
one of the questions that Paris asked to Phil is like, okay, why should I buy an Xbox?
Yeah.
Why, your thoughts about that? Where a company like Microsoft now going multi-platform, those days, early days when you were at PlayStation, it was we have the exclusive. You only can find it on this console. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about that change and that strategy that Microsoft is heading?
Yeah, I understand why people have feelings about it and opinions because if their idea is the identity of me choosing a brand and being beholden to that brand is like, unilateral, and therefore that should be the one source of all content. And I love that Phil mentioned like there's a box in the name, right? Xbox is part of the name. But I do think if we think about it, sort of the analogy of like they were Blockbuster that became Netflix. And what I mean by that is when they began, it was about the physical unit being the sort of entertainment experience in the living room. And that was basically a plastic player that you put discs in and it plays it. So you need to serve people with the physicality of it. Retail and partnerships are important, right? You and I both waited in many lines at many early morning openings to rush in there and sprint against everyone else. I usually lost the race, by the way. But to get that console as fast as we possibly could. And it's just different now. So now they are basically an entertainment provider and not just a disc sort of producer and distributor. So if we think about that, the analogy of like, if we think maybe PlayStation's the HBO, Microsoft's the Netflix, and Nintendo's sort of the Disney, if we think about things like that, then their job is to get it incredibly interactive and engaging entertainment out to as many people as possible. And that's why I'm totally down. Now, you're absolutely right that when you try to sell someone the new version, is it 8K? Is it 16K? Is it 32K? Where are we going from here? Right now, I'm happy with the number of Ks, in the fidelity. It's great. Then the value proposition changes. And I understand why traditionalists are looking at that being like, I don't like change. I want it to only be where I want it to be. And that's the part where my logic gap starts to break. Because when Phil and his team are putting amazing content on more platforms, who's the victim? I've been asking a lot of people like, who's the victim? And there aren't any, except for people that are just like, well, I want it only where I bought it, and that's what I expect. So I think that's interesting. So I applaud them for being agile enough in a sort of changing and transition market to expand. But I agree with you that like the value proposition of that physical unit, that by the way, they weren't making a lot of money on anyway. No one makes a ton of money on the margin of those hard boxes. They make a lot of margin on selling content. So them leaning on that, I don't think it means it's the end of a physical entertainment unit in anyone's living room. But I do think that it's a sign that the game sort of landscape's changing.
Very nice. So taking all that in, like he was saying, Phil Spencer said this too. Hardware innovation is very important for next gen because if you look at things now from the PS4 to PS5 to the Xbox One to the Xbox Series, they were so identical, right? There was not much of a difference. So what's going to be the next best thing now since we know the exclusives are not the thing and living in a blockbuster world, hardware innovation, making it so much of a difference where it's like, okay, now I see why I want this. So if you have this great hardware innovation, and then you have Game Pass, then you have a much better cloud service, then you have full backwards compatibility feats, you have stuff like Quick Resume, you have stuff like Play Anywhere. They still have, and they're still going to have exclusives. Phil Spencer said that. If you combine all that together, then yeah, they could have a very nice selling point next gen with the hybrid OEM models, getting Steam on there and being able to play PlayStation games. Like if you think about that approach and making it to where your online is free like the PC, and whatever games you purchase on your next gen hybrid Xbox, you could also play on your PC. You don't have to buy the same game again. Those are selling points that are going to be very key, knowing that they have a wealth of content too, and you can get other people's games. And also, let's talk about him talking about people being stuck in a traditional world. Well, if you want to be stuck in that world, you can, but the world is not going to go back because you want to be stuck. It's going to continue to be what it needs to be to adapt and change and grow and profit. So that's kind of the reality. So either people get with those times or they stay stuck in the past. But the world is not going to go with you into the past. It's going to continue going where it needs to go. You see what I mean? That's the problem with people stuck in the past is that they think that it could just be locked there. It's like, no, you're just stuck. The times are right here, though. So that's what Adam was saying about the traditionalists. They still want things to be exclusive and they still want to live in the PS3 360 world, but it's like, it's not the world that's here right now. It's changed this moment right here, and we have to adapt to that. And it is better when we want to talk about the way things are. You didn't have this amount of content back then. You didn't have services to try games. You had to fully pay for it and go get ripped off at GameStop. Game Crazy was not too bad, but then again, you had to physically get up and move. You had to worry about your disc getting scratched, all that type of stuff. Though discs are way better now since they moved to the, you could say the Blu-ray type of format, but basically what he said is exactly what's going on now. And that's why people are like the way they are, and mostly in a PlayStation sense, because they're still stuck in that, and they don't like the change that's coming too. Microsoft is actually getting ahead of Sony in that category because the future is digital, stream, and cloud. And eventually, you will just turn on a TV and it has all those services up in front of you, and you're going to choose one. So the most important thing is your content, your service, your in-house first party. Just can't nobody take that away from you. See? So eventually, it's not going to be about hardware sales. So what's going to happen when that gets taken away? No, that's still going to be a while. I think that won't happen until like the late 30s or early 40s, probably early 40s. But at the end of the day, uh, the move that Microsoft is making is actually really good. So people have to give credit to that.
Yeah, I think I could see people saying, you know, if I buy an Xbox, this is the only place I could find Xbox Game Pass. It's not available on, let's say, on PlayStation or Nintendo Switch 2 or something like that. I think that makes sense. So maybe having something like a new feature that's not available somewhere else,
Sure.
I think that will work. Well, people will buy the product. Now, one thing I do want to mention, because I know you brought it up earlier, you know, and this is one of the conversations that stayed in my head for a very, very long time. We had this conversation, I think was at Dice. I can't remember which. I think it was like 2 years ago or so, Adam,
Yeah.
where you brought up and you mentioned to me you told me the story about how the whole game sharing moment. Remember the video you
Yeah.
did with Shu, um, how that in a way like now thinking about it, you feel bad because it's like promoting the console war nonsense, you know. And look, back in those days,
I disagree with him because people want entertainment. A lot of people like to wake up. When you look at Western society and in the world in the sports reality, it's always this versus this. And there's always a war going on. It's can you handle it maturely and have a good time with it? Did y'all just hear what I said? Can you handle it maturely and have a good time with it? It's never going to go away because even if you took away the physical sales war, they're going to move it to something else, to digital, to services, to who has more content. Like it's always going to be there because there's always this comparison in that type of world, whether people like it or not. So you have some people that try to say that, and it's like, yeah, you see, but you're still not understanding reality. You're not understanding the duality of the human nature and of the world. It's not going anywhere, and it never will. It'll always move to something else. So that's something that I'm like, it's not nonsense in that sense. It's nonsense to think that and then try to act like that when you were fully into it. Now you're just all this nice little peaceful person. It's like, hey, I'm not really buying that type of nonsense. And some people can shift away and say that they don't want to get into it, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you can't say that you think that nobody else should be into it because that's just not the way that the media works, and it's not the way things work. And I tell people all the time, yeah, there's entertainment in my videos, there's acting too, but I'm also very genuine. You know what I mean? I'm never going to be fake, and I'm here because I care and I love gaming, and I'm putting my heart into this. You know what I mean? So of course it's going to grow too, and I'm good at what I'm doing, and I'm going to be a unique, real individual. Um, but I'm not going to sit here and say that that doesn't need to be there. That sounds to me like more like a corporate PR statement to push a certain ideology or another identity that they're trying, but it's just not going to work because you're always going to have brand loyalists. People are going to be tribal, and it's just the way that it works. But this is kind of part of the interview that I wanted to highlight. The rest of the stuff, you know what I mean? We don't really have to get into, but this is kind of like the meat of it. And it's nice to see somebody from the PlayStation side that used to be an executive and be in a high position, uh, be intellectually honest because he's not working for Sony. He didn't have to kiss their ass or do any of those things or worry about losing any type of position. And he's just very honest about things and saying that Microsoft's not getting with the times. And he's calling them the Netflix. Meaning, he's basically saying too, like we know Netflix is better than HBO. He's basically saying like the quality that they're providing, their future looks very bright, and that we need to get with the times. I agree with him. So like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think of this. All right, y'all. Peace out. Have a great day.